First of all, the title of this video is not clickbait. I genuinely did end up with one of the best landscape photographs I think I've ever taken. It's certainly one of my favorite. And what makes it one of the best? Well, it's just a simple, honest image with a story. It's when we venture out with no expectations and no pressure that these things tend to happen. I thought I was going out to simply test a camera and a lens. I wasn't expecting to come back with something so delightful. I wasn't expecting to come back with anything, actually. Here's the story. Today, my landscape photography has an objective, and that is to spend time in one little spot in this beautiful park and come home with one great photo. Now, I've got to know this location. I've been here a few times, and every time I walk along the trail, I see this little spot right here and think, I need to spend time there. Well, today, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm looking at this as slow photography, I guess like slow tourism, slow travel, where I'm spending a lot of time just taking my time in this one spot to get that one perfect composition. I'm giving myself plenty of time to look at every possible angle, every possible option, and get it right. It just so happens I have the perfect camera for slow photography. This is the Hasselblad X2D with a beautiful ultra-wide 20 to 35mm zoom, full frame equivalent. That's I think is about 16 to 27mm. This camera forces you to slow down. Now, this is not sponsored by Hasselblad. They don't know I'm even making this video. I'll explain the reason why I've got this camera in another video, I think. So the subject today is going to be this little lone tree. I think it's just delightful. It's right on the edge of this granite outcrop, and it's growing out of a crack in the rock. And it's thriving against all odds. This is a very harsh climate. There's a lot of wind, as you can see today. There's ice and snow and nasty little kids breaking branches. And I think somebody's already broken a branch off of this one, but it's still here. And I just love it. Despite the poor conditions, there's a positivity here. It's the positivity of this little guy. And I think that's going to reflect how I edit the final image. There's going to be a little bit of warmth and hope in the edit, if that makes sense. So I've been here for a little while now, had a good look around, all my options, and I'm starting with putting the camera fairly low to the ground, taking advantage of the fact that it is an ultra-wide lens. I really like these cracks with the moss and the orange pine needles and the way everything leads towards the actual tree. There's lots of leading lines happening here. This is how I've set my camera up to address this, but now I'm actually looking at it, I'm realizing that the camera is actually too low because the top of the tree is getting lost in the dark trees behind. I really need to see the whole tree. So by moving the camera up, I think we'll be able to isolate the tree in the background of the water. The water's obviously light, the tree's dark, so there's going to be a little bit of contrast there and we can actually see our subject. But I'll show you this shot anyway. So we need to come up like that. With a ultra wide angle, I really like to get the camera low and create some drama in the foreground. So we're going to lose that by having to bring the camera up higher. Oh yeah, that's going to work. We keep getting massive gusts of wind. I hope that camera doesn't go flying. So my idea is potentially do a vertical, end up with a vertical image, but the file is so big with this medium format sensor that I can still shoot horizontal and crop it in. I'm still going to end up with a massive file. So that's what I'm going to do. I put the tree in the center of the frame right now. I kind of like the symmetry of it. I've made the creative decision to put a 9-stop neutral density filter on. 9 stops, the highest I've got, so I'll have to make do. The reason is because all the detail and the texture in the pine needles is fighting with the texture in the water, the ripples in the water. I want to create some contrast, some separation. So by putting a neutral density filter on and slowing down my exposure, I'm going to maintain a nice crisp texture in the tree, and the water's going to smooth out a little bit, giving me that contrast. Hopefully. Now the sun's come out and it's so bright, I'm not getting the long exposure that I was getting a few minutes ago when the sun dipped behind the clouds. So I'm gonna just keep working, shoot in this bright light and see what I end up with, and hope that the sun goes behind a cloud again and the light drops a few stops. That's really what I need, a few less stops of light. Enough talking, more shooting. After lots of looking around, it turns out this is the best position. This is going to give me the best composition, and I originally had the camera a little bit further to the left here, and I was shooting straight down this main crack in the rock, which leads to a route which leads to the tree. I like the idea of having a line going straight through the middle of the photo. But now I think I've changed my mind. I've just moved the camera around a tiny little bit more because there's another big crack that leads to the tree. And when you stand in the middle of them, you've got this triangle which points to the tree. I just think that might be a better shot. It's become very overcast, which means I can get my long exposure, which is what I wanted. The background is still very bright though, so I focused on the tree, got my exposure for the tree, the water and the rocks. The background, the sky, was blown out. So I just adjusted the exposure and took another shot, and I'll just blend them together. And also, even though I'm on a fairly wide setting, focal length, 20, I think that's about 26, 27 millimeters, medium format, so full frame, that's about 20 millimeters. That's still pretty wide, and at f13, you'd think you get all of that foreground in focus from this distance, but I actually don't. So I had to do a third shot, just focusing more towards me in the foreground. So I'll be blending 3 images together to get the final shot, and I think, fingers crossed, this is the shot I wanted to get, but I won't know for sure until I get back and look on the big screen, will I? But so far, it's looking good. The screen on this is pretty big and it's pretty good clarity, so it's looking good. That was a wonderful few hours spent in nature. What a lovely little tree. Dramatic lighting and a good story are the 2 main ingredients that make a great photograph, in my opinion. With landscape photography, we tend to veer more towards the lighting to create great photographs. And that's why we see so many landscape photographs shot with low, warm light. These photos were shot in very poor light. It's all I had to work with, so I chose to focus on story instead. Since I started doing more street photography in recent years, I've become more attuned to look for story in all genres of photography. And this change in mindset has definitely helped my landscape photography. Here are the photos from the day. I started with this one. I was drawn to the really interesting foreground, so placed the camera low to enhance it. However, the tree got lost against the background, so I positioned the camera higher to avoid this. I liked how the crack in the rock went vertically up the left third of the composition. I moved the camera to the right, and this allowed me to bring another crack into play and create a triangle in the foreground, which worked really nicely for me. It created a little bit of balance with the tree itself. I liked the placement of the tree in the middle of the frame. When we do this, it always enhances the importance of the subject, and this little tree was important. I decided the camera was a little too high, so I lowered it to do a similar shot, and that meant the foreground triangle was more prominent and it worked even better. The wind had picked up, but I rather liked the little tree having movement. Soon after I stopped filming, the dark rain clouds came along and started to rain. I got wet, but I managed to get one more shot. And as it happens, this is the favorite shot from the day. I decided not to crop vertical. I found it worked better as a wide view. It shows context. It shows the environment in which this little tree has to endure. Leaving the tree line in the background shows what it could become one day. It's part of the story. And they happen to frame the composition quite nicely, balancing with the line of rock at the bottom. A long exposure in the breeze creates blurred pine needles, which I think adds to the story. It shows what this little tree has to put up with day in, day out. The way I edited the photo enhances the cold, harsh environment, but there's a little warmth there, a little glimmer of hope. After I spent some time looking at this photo on my monitor, I realized that this is definitely one of the best landscape photographs I've taken. It's certainly one that I'm the most happiest with. It's just an unassuming view that tells a simple story. That's it. A great landscape photograph doesn't need lots going on. It doesn't need to be about big dramatic vistas and stunning lighting. If anything, those kind of photographs have become a little bit cliched. We see them so often. Though having said that, I still search for some of those bigger, wider shots with this little tree. They're okay, but I keep coming back to my simple little composition. Well, I had a wonderful few hours and I hope you enjoyed coming along on the journey with me. I would be very interested to know if you agree with my thinking here. Did I make the right choice? Do you think there's an image that's better? Maybe you don't think any of them are any good. I'd love to hear anyway. Thanks so much for watching. Do consider subscribing and I'll see you next time.